Hello, everyone. Happy New Year and welcome to the first meetup of 2026. We have a repeat presenter, Brian Piper. The title of Brian's talk is AI Forward, Human First, AI Forward, Human First, the future of content, creativity, and connection. In this talk, you'll learn how to use AI to manage content pipelines, repurpose like a pro, and surface insight-rich data that drives decisions. The session is a guide to building more innovative content systems without becoming another generic AI clone. Brian, thanks for joining and take it away.
Thanks so much for having me, Dennis, and thanks for everybody for coming. You should be able to see my slides now.
Yep.
So, so really talking about AI forward, human first content. So we've heard a lot of companies come out and say we are an AI first company, which initially, you know, causes some consternation among the employees because they're like, what about us? It causes some consternation with the audience because we want valuable content and we think that most of that valuable content is going to come from other people and not just from generically generated AI content. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. But first, I want to paint a picture. So I'm 13,000 feet above the ground, hanging on the outside of the airplane, getting ready to let go. Now, I've been jumping out of planes for over 35 years and teaching other people to do it for 25 of those. I've got over 3,000 jumps, and over 700 of those were either with people strapped to the front of me or with me holding on to them as we fall through the sky. So I've dealt with panic and uncertainty. Um, I've held people in free fall while their minds are kind of catching up to what their bodies are doing. But this time was different because this time I was looking back in the door at my daughter who was getting ready to jump. And it was at this moment right here where she turned her head and locked eyes with me. And for just a second, I saw the desperation and panic. And I couldn't let her know that I was feeling the same thing. I mean, this was my baby girl. I'd spent 18 years doing everything I could to protect her from harm, to alleviate her fears and uncertainties. And now I was watching her get ready to jump out of a plane by herself for the first time. And it was all my fault. But I knew she had all the tools she needed. Her training had been comprehensive. We had gone through every possible scenario, practiced how to deal with each one. But that ability to overcome the fear in the moment, that is where it all comes together. And then with a nod and a ready, set, go, we left the plane and she did great because she was prepared mentally and physically. We had taken all the little steps that we needed to get her to the door. And that moment of stepping into uncertainty, that is exactly where we find ourselves today with AI. So, where do we integrate? Is it going to work? What about the risks? How do we do this responsibly? We face fear and uncertainty all the time in our lives and in our jobs, and most of that comes from one thing, and that is change. Because as humans, we like structure, we like predictability. We want our custom GPTs to work the same way they worked the last time. We like that consistency. But we all have to figure out how to deal with all this change that's happening and to face all these obstacles in a way that keeps us moving forward. So whether it's, taking on a new role or meeting your quarterly goals or realizing that we have to figure out how to integrate this technology that is going to replace parts or all of our jobs in a way that is responsible and ethical. And change is the key to growth. And fear is not your enemy, it is your launch sequence. It's not a sign that you're doing the wrong thing, it's proof that what you're doing matters. So we don't need to eliminate the fear, we just need to realign with it. And that happens by taking small steps. So educating yourselves, learning more about the tools, figuring out what questions to ask. In skydiving, we don't start at the edge of the door, we start on the ground talking about the gear. We normalize it. We break it down into understandable components so that you can make informed decisions about it. So today I'm going to show you how you can do that with AI, how to take those small steps and think about how you're integrating these tools in a way that gets you ready to do it responsibly. So I am a AI integration and content marketing consultant. I left my full-time job at the University of Rochester back in May of last year. And since then, I've been helping other institutions and organizations figure out how
Where to
to
put it?
integrate AI in a way that
That's
is
weird.
impactful and has that long-term solution that is also responsible and thinking about the people that you are integrating this for. I've written some books on content marketing. I have a podcast on integrating AI into higher education. Please connect with me if you haven't already. So here's what I know. We're all trying to leverage AI. We want the efficiency, we want the competitive advantage, we want that transformation that everybody keeps promising us. And we are surrounded by people, and maybe even you find yourself also asking that very seductive question, why not? Why not automate that report? Why not let AI write that first draft? Why not replace that agency with an internal tool? So why not is the most powerful question in business right now, and people are answering it. So Podium creates AI software to help businesses increase revenue by converting leads. They've got tens of thousands of agents that they've deployed out there for small businesses, and they're consistently seeing 300% year over year AI revenue growth. They've seen client lead conversion increase 45% on average. Nutella wanted to use AI. They said, why not make every jar unique? Their algorithm generated 7 million different label designs, and the entire inventory sold out in 1 month. Their ability to use AI to create new opportunities and to really innovate in the way they were producing allowed them to tap into algorithm scarcity and market scarcity. Klarna asked why not, and they saved $10 million annually. They cut their external agency spend by 25%. They collapsed their image development timeline from 6 weeks to 7 days. And their AI started handling the workload of 700 different customer service humans. So that is the seductive power of why not. And that assumes that if something can be done, it should be done. It's that question that precedes disruption, innovation, and speed, but it's also a trap, right? And right now, 68% of marketing leaders view AI as essential, but the push isn't really just about utility anymore. It's also about the fear of missing out on the possible. But what nobody is saying is that it's working, but it's breaking things, right? 1 in 3 marketers have witnessed layoffs in the past 12 months. And the people that are still employed are more efficient, but communications sometimes feel flatter, decisions feel riskier, and they're often left wondering, does my judgment matter? Does my craft still count? So the work is faster, but less human. So what happens when why not goes wrong? So we've heard about Air Canada, right? They deployed a chat bot to handle their customer inquiries. Why not let the bot handle it? Right? And the bot gave a customer wrong information about bereavement fares that it pulled from old content. And when they were sued, they tried saying that the chatbot was a separate legal entity that was responsible for its own actions. And this was rejected by the courts. You cannot outsource liability to an algorithm. Air Canada asked why not without asking, why do we trust this model with sensitive policies? And remember, I mentioned Klarna, right? They are now hiring customer service representatives back. And one of their spokespeople said that AI gives them speed, but talent gives them empathy. So combining those two is how they deliver a service that is fast and empathetic and personal. And their CEO even came out and said that, the cost was um, too big a factor when they were thinking about how to integrate AI. And what they ended up with was lower quality. We saw that with Salesforce too. Last year, they reduced their headcount from 9,000 people to 5,000 people. And getting rid of those 4,000 positions, mainly in customer service and software development, had an impact. And within the past few weeks, we've seen Salesforce acknowledge that it's going to pull back from its reliance on large language models after encountering reliability issues that have had an impact on their company confidence. So the chief technology officer of Agentforce noticed that when the tool was given more than 8 instructions, it started omitting things. And then one of their customers was using Agentforce to deliver surveys after each customer support call. And they noticed that some surveys just weren't being delivered. And they also discovered something called AI drift that causes AI to get distracted when customers would ask unrelated questions to the topic that they were talking about. CNET published AI written finance articles. Out of 77 different articles, 41 of them needed corrections. That's 53% with errors, and those were published before they realized that they needed to be fixed. They were basic math mistakes, phrases that weren't entirely original, and it just further proves that more isn't always better. Better is better. Sports Illustrated was publishing product reviews written by AI personas. So fake authors with fake headshots and fake biographies. And this spawned all sorts of discussions about truth and trust and information and media. And our trust with our audiences is one of our most valuable commodities and one of the easiest ones to lose with poor AI governance. And it really is a distinct asset class from information. So truth and trust are very important and really the fastest things that you can lose by using AI without being transparent about it. Levi's announced that they were going to use AI generated models to show diversity in their photos. But the backlash came back immediately with people saying, diversity doesn't count if you're not diversifying who is on the payroll. So just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should do something. Studies have shown that consumer trust drops up to 50% when content is labeled AI generated. And that can be even higher if your audience discovers afterwards that the content is AI generated, but if it's portrayed as human generated. Over 80% of Gen Z distrust social posts that they suspect aren't created by real humans. So what I've learned from helping lots of different organizations navigate this transition is that the problem isn't AI, it is tool first thinking or solution first thinking. So we're rolling out prompts and platforms before we've answered the only question that really matters: what needs to remain unmistakably human? So when we skip that step, people fill that gap with fear, confusion, and hype. And that's when AI becomes a threat instead of a tool, or a challenge instead of a solution. So why not is an insufficient ethical, responsible framework. It provides permission to act, but only by asking why do you focus on that responsibility to pause and to think before you integrate AI. So just because you can automate something doesn't mean that you should. So successful organizations have to balance both sides of this, right? So don't be the ones that ask why not the fastest, right? You have to balance that rhetoric of possibility with the philosophy of responsibility. So it's It's not about choosing between AI and humans. It's about being AI forward, but human first. So not just doing less with AI, but protecting what really matters. So let's look at what this looks like when an organization gets it right. So CarMax is America's largest used car retailer, and they had a problem that seemed impossible to solve with the resources they had. They needed unique research content for thousands of different car models. They needed pages, they needed feature summaries, they needed pros and cons and customer insights for every vehicle they sell. So that kind of content really helps buyers make confident decisions, and it makes CarMax a trusted source and authority for this. If their team was going to do this manually, they figured out that it would take them 11 years to do the research, to go through all the data, to put together all the content. That's for all of those vehicles. So they asked, why not use AI? But what made them different from all the companies we looked at earlier is they didn't just employ AI and hope for the best. They designed a system where AI did what it does best and humans did what we do best. So they fed the AI a cleaned data set of over 100,000 different customer reviews. So real experiences, real voices, real insights from actual buyers. Then they gave the AI specific prompts. So summarize all customer reviews of the 2018 Kia Sorento, right? That highlight new features from that year. So then the AI generated draft snippets for every vehicle, new features, trim differences, review highlights. And then what they did is every single AI draft went through a human review. So an editor reviewed each snippet for accuracy and brand voice. They fact checked against the original data. And then they asked for each one of those snippets, does this sound like us? And does this serve our customer? So 80% of the AI generated summaries were approved after that human review. And the 20% that weren't were rewritten entirely by humans because the team recognized when the AI had missed something. So they built those responsible AI checks into the system, filtering out anything that was harmful that might come out of those reviews. They never exposed private customer data. The AI only saw the anonymized, aggregated feedback. And the result was they went from zero research content to over 5,000 pages live in months, not 11 years. So SEO traffic spiked, search rankings improved, customer conversion improved because buyers had the information they needed to make those decisions. And CarMax won a CIO 100 award for innovation for that project. So why I'm calling this story out is because CarMax didn't just say, why not let AI handle everything? They asked what AI could do that would take us 11 years and what humans must do to make sure that it's right. And the AI did the heavy lifting, the processing of 100,000 reviews, the generating the drafts at scale, which is what it's good at. And then the humans ensured the quality, they verified the accuracy, they protected the brand voice, and then they took accountability for everything that was published. And that's what humans are good at. Because one thing AI cannot do is take responsibility for content that you put out there. So this is what AI forward and human first looks like. The goal isn't to remove humans from the equation. It's to remove that non-human work that is blocking the human work so people can show up more fully as humans. So when you're looking at frameworks to integrate that can help you in your organization do this, it's by asking, there's three different frameworks I use. The first one is this 3 questions framework. So before you automate any task, stop and ask, does this create opportunities for human interaction? So when I was at University of Rochester, We wanted to create virtual teaching assistants so that if the students were, working on something at 2 in the morning and their regular TA wasn't available, their professor wasn't available, they could go use these virtual TAs. So there is an opportunity that we're replacing something that creates human connection. So typically you want to protect that, right? That connection builds trust. That customer support conversation where someone feels heard, that's not a cost center. That's a trust building engine. So they built those virtual TAs, but they didn't get rid of their regular TAs. They didn't get rid of office hours for the instructors. And the virtual TAs saw a lot of use in the evenings. They saw a lot of use with questions that students might be hesitant or embarrassed to ask their professors, but it had no impact on the interactions that the regular TAs were having. The second question is, do you or your team enjoy performing the task? So this one surprises people a lot because, if someone finds something, if they find satisfaction in something that they do, right? Joy in your work equals engagement, creativity, retention. When you automate the parts of someone's job that they enjoy doing, you're not just changing their workflow, you're changing their relationship with their work. So don't automate meaning out of someone's role. Obviously, you have to balance the amount of time something takes versus the enjoyment that they get out of it. But definitely a question that needs to be asked. And then finally, if AI replaces a human worker, how are you going to upskill them, right? This is the responsibility question because AI takes tasks, not jobs, but only if we're intentional about it, right? So writers become editors and strategists. Data entry clerks become data analysts and validators and verifiers. Customer service reps become experience designers. So when Klarna had to bring back a whole bunch of customer service reps and they had to start hiring them again, they realized that there were situations that the AI would get into where they weren't normal, they weren't standard, they weren't the typical questions that were asked. They were unique outliers, and you need humans there to be able to navigate those. So the question isn't, can AI do this? The question is, what will our people do instead, and how will we get them there? The next framework I always do is the human in the loop sandwich. So this should be in every AI policy that you create. So think of it as the humans on the bread of both sides, right? And AI is the filling in the middle. So the human creates the prompt, right? The brief, the direction. You upload all of the data that you need. We have that expertise to be able to determine whether or not the content that we're putting into the system to feed the action is strategic, if it's focused on our users, right? And then AI will generate its content based on all of our expertise feeding into the system. And then on the other side, you need the human to review all that, right? To edit it as necessary, to approve it, to validate it, and to take accountability for that content before it goes out into the world. So create 73% of marketers report that their best performing content was human edited AI output. So not raw AI text, but not pure human writing either. It was the hybrid of the two. So think of AI as your sous chef, not your head chef. It preps the ingredients, it does the chopping, the measuring, but the human orchestrates the meal, right? The human tastes it and adjusts it and plates it and presents it. Duolingo discovered this the hard way, right? They went AI first with content creation and users noticed it immediately. They said that the content had lost their soul and the cultural nuance of the content had disappeared and things felt robotic. So human judgment is irreducible in certain contexts, right? Your job as a leader is to identify those contexts before you automate them away. And then the third framework is, oh, and I misspelled, I put a C at the end of frameworks. Um, the third framework is the content risk matrix. So not all content is created equal, right? Your governance needs to match the stakes that you're facing with your content. So tier one is high risk content. So legal statements, health or financial advice, crisis communications, CEO messages, anything with any sort of regulatory or serious brand implications. This kind of content should be human written or heavily human edited, right? If you are using an AI to draft it, you should have multi-stage review for this sort of content where more than one person is reviewing it. And then legal and leadership should sign off on this one way or another so that they're taking responsibility. The second tier is medium risk. So this is like marketing emails, blog posts, product descriptions, social media ads, right? So AI can generate all of these, but a human editor needs to check the facts, look at the tone, make sure there's brand alignment, make sure the messaging is right before this gets approved. And then tier three is the low risk stuff. So internal documents, metadata, page descriptions, transcriptions, all these sorts of things, right? So this is high automation with light human spot checking just to make sure it's accurate. So anytime you're thinking, do we automate this or do we humanate this? And yes, humanate is actually a word. Um, so what you want to do is you want to ask a series of questions. So if this is repetitive or data driven, yes, right? It is a great opportunity for automation. So anytime I go into an organization and start doing a workshop about pilot projects, these are the questions that we ask. What tasks do you perform that are repetitive or data driven? Those are low hanging fruit for automation. And then are they highly creative or do you need a lot of empathy to understand your audience? Those, yeah, should be human driven, but you can use AI as an assistant to do that. So a lot of organizations I work with, I'll go in, I'll help them create a series of persona custom GPTs. So interactive personas that they can use that are trained on, either existing traditional personas they have or that are constructed by using all the data that they have about their customers. So it can really look into who the customer is, and then you can ask it questions about your content before you publish that content. And then is there high risk impact? Is there legal or brand impact from the content that you're creating? If yes, humans should own that, right? You have to get human approval. You have to have humans take responsibility and take ownership of that content before it gets released. But AI can assist with that. I create a lot of, either custom GPTs or gems that are brand voice generators so that you can take an existing piece of content from multiple different authors, put it into the brand voice generator. It makes it consistent. So there's the same voice, there's the same tone that's used throughout that piece of content. And then large volumes, pattern-based things in higher ed, that's like product descriptions, course descriptions, job descriptions, those sorts of things. Those can be AI assisted and human QA'd and kind of look at those on a case-by-case basis. So when it comes down to it, if a mistake with your content could hurt trust or safety, keep a human in charge. That's kind of a great little hard and fast rule. So when you think about all the different things that we do in our jobs, there are lots of things that we can automate. So here's a list of things that you can automate without losing the personality, without having your brand voice misinterpreted, right? All sorts of different ways that you can do all sorts of transcription, captioning. AI is so great at that. Content summarization, outline generation, variations on your headlines or titles or subject lines, right? Grammar and consistency checks. A lot of times, an organization I'm working with will have a particular style guide that they've created. You can create a custom GPT or a gem that they can upload a piece of content into, and it will go through that content and call out or highlight areas that should be changed based on the style guide. And it will even educate the writer and say, here's why I recommend this change. Here is in the style guide where it says that you should refer to the organization this way or that way. Image, alt text, right? Meta descriptions, those sorts of things. It's so good at those. And those are things that we really shouldn't be writing ourselves because a lot of times they are not read by people. A lot of times, like meta descriptions, a lot of times Google will dynamically generate meta descriptions for your web pages. Now, I love a good meta description, and that's like your last call to action to get somebody to actually click through on the page. It tells them what is on the page. But I mean, if AI can write a good meta description, which it can, then we shouldn't have to be spending our time doing that. Um, Timing, figuring out when to optimize the distribution of your content, right? Remember when people used to be, oh, what's the best time to post on LinkedIn? It's Tuesday at 2:30, and then everybody was posting on Tuesday at 2:30, and it was no longer the best time. So AI can look at your social stats and figure out what is the best time for you to post to your specific audience based on the content that you have. Multi-language translation, AI is very good with translation. Analytics reporting, I do a lot of pilot projects that tend to be either content creation or data analysis. The content creation side, we typically will see a 20 to 40% savings in time on those projects. The data analysis and reporting projects will typically see a 60 to 80% savings in time because it is just so good at doing that kind of work. And then content tagging and categorization. I think this is critical, and this is something that we're going to see a lot more of because one thing that AI can't do for an organization is help with data or content governance. So it can't go in and clean up your scattered data, without a lot of oversight, without a lot of direction. But what it can do is it can surface issues that you have. It can show you where you have duplicate content or where you have content that might be out of date. And then it can go back through and it can help tag your content and classify your content. So it makes it easier for you to identify it. So these are great things to automate it, right? AI does the prep work and then we do the final shaping. And then there are things that you probably shouldn't automate, things that, you should probably be nervous about automating. And those are things like that final editorial sign off, right? Don't leave that up to AI to say, yep, this is good, send it out into the world, right? Core creative concept and storytelling, right? That should be a human leading that. You can leverage AI to help with those, but those should be human first things. Emotional copy, sensitive communication. AI is not very good at that sort of storytelling and connection building. Deep audience engagement, where your communities are replying, where you need that critical support, probably better to let humans manage that. Strategic decision making, AI is great at advising on strategic decisions, but I wouldn't let AI drive my business. Moral and ethical judgments, definitely not a realm for AI. Relationship building content. AI is great at looking at the data you have around what is working in your content. It's great at coming up with ideas about where you have gaps in your content and what sorts of things your audience might be interested in. Don't let your AI write all that content from scratch because you're trying to create trust with that content. Don't let your audience later discover that AI was writing all of that content for you. It's a great way to destroy trust. And then original thought leadership. It's original for a reason, right? It should not be turned over to AI. So if automating something will make you nervous to admit to your boss, to your board, to your audience, then that's a strong signal that you should keep it human. So there's a lot of different checklists that I use, a lot of different questions that I ask, either before publishing AI content or when you're getting ready to um, figure out how to automate a specific task. So make sure that the content is in the right voice, it has the right personality, it matches your brand standards, right? That it has that empathy and emotional intelligence, right? One of the things we're going to see in this era of AI slop that we're entering is people are looking for authentic human content. They're looking for vulnerability. They're looking for things that they know are coming from a person and aren't just being generated by large language models. Trust and accountability. If you're using AI, be transparent about how you're using it. Be accountable to it. If people call something out and you used AI for an image and you didn't you didn't tag it as being used from an AI image tool, admit to it. Be like, yep, that was an AI image. Absolutely. Taste and cultural sensitivity. You have to look at your content and make sure that you're not offending someone, that you're not forgetting something. AI models are biased. They're trained off a large amount of data. And a lot of times the model is not thinking about underrepresenting particular organizations or groups of people. And then look to see if your content actually has an original insight. Is there something in this that differentiates it from the, generic AI content that anybody can just go out and get in, their generative AI search results? So those are kind of the human value checklist that I look at whenever I'm getting ready to publish a piece of content or release a piece of content. And then when it comes to trust and transparency guidelines, I'm always very outward about disclosing AI use, right? When I'm working with a client, I make sure that, if I'm helping them come up with AI guidelines, that's one of the guidelines they come up with for their internal AI usage. If you're going to use the tools, disclose it. Now, I get a lot of questions about, well, I used it to edit it, I used it to update the photo. Where's the line? Where do I need to say this is AI generated or this is AI assisted? And that's different from, organization to organization, but I work a lot in higher ed. I'm like, we have a higher standard that we need to adhere to. And, our audiences expect more from us. Over disclose. I mean, if you're using Grammarly to do some editing on your copy, I'm not worried about that. But if AI is the core creator behind a piece of content, or if it has edited the content enough to significantly change or impact the meaning, then I recommend that you disclose that. And then label it right on your page. If you're giving credits, I give credit to the AI tool as it's being used. Don't portray your AI content as human created content. Fastest way to lose trust with an audience. And then if using AI has changed the meaning of the piece, if it may change the way that the audience interprets it, you may want to disclose that as well. So then tactically, I have some steps that I take through. So there are some guardrails that I put within my prompts that help me get better outputs. So these are all different things that I kind of have set up that I just dump into probably 80% of the prompts that I use. So the first one is require a source. So tell the tool only answer information from, specific sources and cite the sources. Now, if you're using deep research, it does that automatically. It cites the sources so you can go and validate it. But most of the time in a standard response, it won't do that. So I'm specific. Like if you give me data, if you give me information, cite your source. And then if you're unsure, just say, I don't have the information. Don't make it up. I know you want to please me, but just tell me right up front, I made this up or I don't have the information. And then you can tell it to analyze for bias or stereotypical language. It will do the analysis on that, but a lot of times when it's giving information back to you, it's not looking at it from that perspective. So you have to ask it either when you're doing the prompt or after you do the prompt in a follow-up prompt to go back and look at the language that it's using. And then fact check it. Sometimes I'll take output from one tool, I'll paste it in another tool, I'll ask it to fact check it. I still go fact check it myself after that. But sometimes it'll catch things, it'll call things out that it's easy to just say, well, I'm just going to remove that because Claude told me that Gemini made that up or whatever. And then, red teaming. I'm always asking the tool to, come back, play the devil's advocate, give me a counter arguments. What errors might there be in this? What things might you have gotten wrong? And that's another good place where you can take one model and put it into another model to test for those sorts of things. And then governance and compliance. AI governance, I think, is going to get big in 2026. I think we're going to see more people trying to figure out how do we make sure that the tools that we're setting up, we've been told we need to integrate AI. How do we make sure that the data that we're entering into it is private and secure? How do we make sure that we're getting accurate information out of that? So I think data privacy is a key to um, expert governance. So don't put personal information into any public AI tools. When I'm working with higher ed organizations, I tell them straight up front, I'm like, even if you have a paid version, don't put student records, don't put healthcare data into these tools because they say it's not being used to train the model. But we have seen instances like with Google where the generative search results started returning prompts that people had put into the tool, even people with paid versions. So that data is still being stored in their system somewhere. So if you want to put PII or PHI into one of these tools, you need to either be using API calls on a local version of the tool, or you need to have an open source model that you have set up specifically for that purpose that you have locked down. Use placeholders. So a lot of times we will take existing data that we have. We do this a lot when we're looking at survey results. We'll just strip out all of the information, but we'll put in an identifier within there. So then later when we get the data back, we can go back and match those up manually. And really treat AI like it's a third-party contractor that's under an NDA, right? You can give it some information, but be careful what you give it because at some point it could release that information somewhere down the road. And then when it comes to IP and copyright, very similar stuff, right? Run your AI text through plagiarism detectors. Don't use copywritten materials in your prompts because a lot of times those will get returned as answers to you. Ensure that there is meaningful human contribution and then that your content is copyright protected, and then document AI contributions for potential disputes down the road. So I do have one final story that I want to wrap up with, but I think we've got about 5 minutes or so. We can do questions if anybody has any questions for me. Let me open up the chat too to see if there are any questions in there.
Can you go back to your what to disclose, when to disclose slide?
Yes, absolutely. Oh, what to disclose?
Yeah.
Um, trying to remember this one.
No, go forward. Let's see.
So this was what to automate, what not to automate. The checklist things. This one?
Ah, this is the
There we
one.
go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Hey, Brian, I've gotten some requests for your slides. So if you're willing to share them, if you want to send them to me afterwards, I'll make them available to the group.
You bet. Absolutely.
Cool.
Glad to do that.
Let's see, there's a couple questions in the chat. Let me check these out. So Andy asks, if you're trying to convince leaders to keep humans in the AI loop, what is the one talking point you would lean on?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of times, I just go back to the expertise and the responsibility thing. So AI is great, but it is trained on such a large amount of data. It's trained on the entire internet. It's trained on every book that's been published practically. When you just ask AI a general question, you get general answers because it's using all of that knowledge. When you have an expert ask a question, they narrow it down, right? They start by giving it just the data that it needs. They know specifically how to ask the question to get the best responses. If you're training a custom GPT or a gem to get it to do a very specific task, you need to be very specific about your instructions. So that's where you need that expertise. You need the industry knowledge. You need someone who understands how this really works in the world, that understands your audience, that understands your organization, that may understand like political things within your organization that need to be considered as part of this content. So that's really like upfront, definitely need expertise. And then on the back end, you really need that expertise to be able to look at that output and say, this is not great. This is great. I like this. Let's use this. I very rarely, I use AI to help me with my newsletter. So I write my newsletter first. I put it in the tool. I ask it how to adjust it for my audience, how to make it as valuable as possible. I give it all the information about my audience. And then I pick and choose what I like and what I don't like, what's funny and what's not funny. So you need that expertise on the back end. And then you need somebody that's willing to step up and say, this content is good. It's the best I can get working with these tools, collaborating with these tools, better than what I would write for myself, way better than what AI would write by itself. I will take responsibility for this. I will own this. So that's where I really lean into, using that expertise, showing that you need that human experience. Look at Klarna, look at Salesforce. They are hiring people back. Now, they're not going to hire back all 700 customer service agents. They're not going to Salesforce isn't going to hire back all 4,000 coders, but they know that they need people with the expertise to be able to work with the AIs to make sure that they're getting the best output.
Yeah, and Brian, you shared so many good real world examples at the beginning, like those gotchas. So I think to add to the answer to Andy's question, I would use like some of those gotchas if they make sense to make your case, because there's nothing better than to scare the exec into saying this bad thing happened, and they'll have a second thought, I think.
Absolutely. And anytime you can, especially with leadership, anytime you can change it back to, an ROI, you can use a specific dollar figure in there. That always helps as well.
Yeah. I think we have a question from Lynn.
Yes. Hi. There I am. Okay. Yeah, Brian, I have a question. If you could elaborate a little bit more about the Duolingo. The reason is about, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months ago, my husband became very interested in Duolingo because of the integration of Rive and the very unique way they gamified it. He was never interested in learning a language, but because of their unique take on it, he has now been doing it for the last 6 months. So I'm just wondering, did, and I could see how that would be a very different look for people who were on the site before, but has it, since the change, I know it alienated some people, but has it increased with another maybe demographic?
Well, I think a lot of, and I know that it impacted some of the teaching and learning, and a lot of it was audience perception. So a lot of the audience came in and said, now it sounds very robotic. Now it sounds very prescriptive. It doesn't have that human element that it had before. So sometimes it's just being very conscious about who your audience is and how they might perceive this.
Mm-hmm.
So I did some work with Sunio Nianta in New York, and their marketing team, when everybody was doing the AI action figures, right? Their marketing team said, "Oh, won't it be fun if we created a AI action figure of our mascot and put that out on social?" And they
Mm-hmm.
did that, and their students were outraged because there's a lot of design students at the university. They're like, this was a perfect opportunity for you to use the students and connect with the students, and you
Mm-hmm.
just outsourced it to AI. So being conscious of who your audience is, how they're going to perceive this, and what their thoughts might be on it, I think is I think Duolingo could have um, done this shift if they didn't do it quite so publicly, if they, did it more strategically, if they rolled it out gradually instead of trying to do it all at once, it might have worked out better for them.
Got it. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
And we'll make this
So,
our last question. We have a question from Michael Hill. Michael, go ahead.
Hey there, really enjoyed it. I wanted to ask, so I work for a big marketing tech company, but part-time I'm also a musician, a singer-songwriter. I play weddings, private events too, and create content on social media to connect to my audience, my clients. So what does that look like, I guess, from the social media side with video creation? I've been just using ChatGPT to kind of like strategize on topics to create videos around. Any thoughts on that?
yeah, I think that people who have expertise and experience in video and photography in music are going to, if they lean into these tools, are going to be able to augment their skills and exponentially increase the amount of content, like quality content that they can create. I think that they're going to have to do that in order to compete with all the AI slop that is going to be created. Every 2 weeks, Suno generates enough music to replace the entire Spotify playlist. So there is going to be a huge amount of competition out there. And I think people with talent are going to shine because they're going to be able to create better content. So it's a great question. And I do just want to, we're almost at time. So I just want to wrap up with my final story. So nobody is really ready for change, right? Not until you have to step into it. I tell people all the time, stop trying to eliminate your fear and uncertainty and start using it as your compass, right? We don't need more buzzwords. We don't need another futurist screaming about disruption. We need you in the room with your team at the table. The leaders shaping the next decade aren't the ones who are asking, how do we use AI? They're the ones who ask, how do we make change feel possible? And how do we help our people take the next step? Because transformation isn't a leap of faith, it's a walk to the door together. So when my daughter jumped out of that plane, she was not fearless. She was ready enough. She trusted the parachute, she trusted her instructors, and she trusted her training. And she jumped scared. We both did. But when we landed, she took off her helmet and her goggles and looked at me and said, I didn't know the sky could look that different. So that is what this moment is. It's a chance to see our world from a new perspective, to guide your team into what's next with clarity, not chaos. So you trust the framework that you've built. Change is the only runway that we get. So let's face it with purpose. Let's face it together. The question isn't, are you ready? The question is, will you jump? Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Brian. As another father of a daughter, that was really a really touching story and just a great analogy for where we are with AI. So thanks again, Brian, and thanks everyone for joining us. We have another meetup scheduled this month and more to come in 2026. Take care.
Awesome.